welcome back. I'm Gus, I'm an editor, an animator, and a visual effects artist. Welcome to episode 6 of Brick Film School, the series where I teach you how to get started on your filmmaking journey. Today I'll be talking about working with blue and green screens for film and specifically LEGO animation, knowing when to use it, what to use, and how to use it. This topic was larger than I anticipated, so there will actually be a second part coming out next week, which will be touching more on the computer side of things. If you enjoyed this video, click that like button, and also consider subscribing. I upload every single week, and you're not going to want to miss it. Also, if you missed my recent animation, Stormtrooper Sharpshooter, be sure to check that out. It was released just a few days ago. I put a lot of work into it, so if you're interested, be sure to give that a watch. Boy oh boy, another Brick Film School. It's already been 6 episodes and we've barely scratched the surface. Today, like I said, is about green screens and blue screens, but more specifically, that technique that we use is actually called chroma keying. Keying out a specific color to isolate an object from its background. I'll mostly be referring to all screens as green screens in this video just to make things simpler. But you can really use any color you want for this method. It just can't be on your character or object that you're trying to isolate. Blue, green, yellow, pink, they've all been used. If your character's wearing green, use a blue screen and vice versa. The most common screen used is a green screen, so if you want to get started, that's the best place to start. But it's always good to have blue and green on hand if you're able to. Now, green screens are really a necessary evil for filmmaking today. I can't really think of anybody who likes or wants to work on a green screen. I mean, except George. It never works just right, like, especially if you're not working on a professional level. The screen isn't lit evenly, it's reflecting off the actors, the problems go on and on. But yet, it's still the simplest way to isolate characters, subjects, objects from its background, so they can then be an element. The reason I'm telling you this is basically to say, only use a green screen when you have to. I would never use a green screen if I could get away with it, but it's a necessary evil. How to know when to use a green screen? Like every single shot in a film, it's a completely case-by-case basis. For Darth Vader vs. Kylo Ren, I was juggling techniques constantly for when I can use a practical sky background and when I need to use a green screen. The green screen came into play for shots like this, where he's standing in front of this structure that doesn't exist. And the reason I used a green screen over just masking him out is because of how many frames he's moving and how much of his body we see. For a shot like this, it's just his head and only a couple moving frames. I simply use masking because it produces a better result for close-ups. Also, masking like this is called rotoscoping. You're doing roto work at that point. But you're using the mask tool in After Effects, so I just use those terms interchangeably. But for a wide shot like this, I knew the green screen was the best way to go about it due to the size of Kylo in the frame and how much work masking this number of frames would be. So this is really how it goes, shot by shot, frame by frame. How much time does this shot deserve or require to get your desired effect? And would anyone, including yourself, be able to tell the difference between you using one technique over another? Especially after going through YouTube's compression. These are all questions to ask yourself before tackling a shot like this. And you just get better at knowing right off the bat which technique's going to work best for a shot with the more experience you have. So don't let the fear of failure stop you from tackling a project. The only way to improve in film is to actually make films. What to use for a green screen. What I've used for ages has been these poster boards or poster paper. I don't know the exact name of these, but you can find them at your local Target, Walmart, any store like that for like 80 cents. But you can either keep them their full size for larger sets and stuff like that, or you can cut them down to scale if you're just working with characters and stuff like that. So it's just a cheap way to get a lot of material to work with. If you have the ability to use this next technique, I would really recommend it. If you have access to a smartphone or tablet that you're not using for animation, you can download a green or blue image right off of Google and use this for your green screen. The benefit this has over the standard paper method is just simply convenience. It lights itself evenly without you having to figure that out, so it's just a great way to save time if you have the ability to do that. But it's not required. It's not the only way to do it. I've been doing animation for 9 years and I've only recently started using this method, so whatever you use for your green screen, the main thing is that it just has to be one solid color. It can't have breaks in the paper or printing on it or dirt scratches, anything like that. It just has to be one solid color. How to use a green screen. This will cover lighting and how to reduce reflections, so take notes. The green screen should be set apart from the element you're trying to isolate. The image I shared on Instagram isn't a good example of how to do this, where the character is literally set like this, because you'll have reflections everywhere on this character. That was just a special case because I just needed the pants element. So always keep your green screen as far back as you can, because the further back it is, the less reflection you'll have on your character. Setting your green screen apart from your character will sometimes require you to raise your set up, like in Darth Vader vs. Kylo Ren. That was just by stacking pieces like this, and the set was raised. So just make sure you keep that in mind before building. You may need to raise your set if you're working with a green screen. Always remember that the only place the green screen needs to be is right behind your character. Yes, it doesn't look very pretty through the camera lens, but honestly, it's going to hurt you more in shots where it's not necessary. Next thing you want to do is make sure your green screen is lit evenly. And remember, the green screen only really has to be perfectly even right behind your subject, so if you're working with limited light, just remember that and just do your best to keep the area right behind your character a solid one-tone green color. A way to make your lights not as harsh is to just put paper like this, tape it. Make sure if you do this you're using LED bulbs, because you don't want a hot light to be shining right on paper. You'll also want to focus primarily on the backlight of your character. You have a light for your green screen, then you'll have a light facing at the back side of the character. This will give your character a more defined edge and also help reduce reflections, because you'll be getting a reflection of the light rather than a reflection of the green screen. Also, since the only part of the shot that needs to be green is right behind your character, you can use random stuff right outside the frame. This can be literally anything, but sometimes those reflections that are hitting your character in a place where you don't want the reflection to be is coming from a part of the green screen that won't be used. So this is just a technique that I've been using to reduce reflections. If you're trying all these things and you're still having reflection problems, don't worry. In some cases, in a lot of cases, keying at that part that is reflecting isn't as big of a deal as you might think, because sometimes it looks like it is actually just reflecting the background. And in the cases where it actually does matter, I'll be showing you how to go about correcting this in the computer in part 2. Okay, it's Q&A time. Q&A! Now it's time for the Q&A portion of this video. Coming straight to you from your local Instagram. How do you deal with objects out of focus on a green screen? Basically, what I do if I have a shot where something's going to be out of focus, I don't shoot it out of focus. I shoot it completely flat. That just means increasing your exposure time, so then you're not going to get those soft edges. You add the soft edges back in the computer if that's the look you want. And again, I'll be showing a little bit more about that in part 2. How do you add your character to a Blender creation? Well, how I do it, basically because it's just compositing, I take my green screen element and my Blender element and I put them together in After Effects, so the combination technique doesn't really change in my workflow. There are ways to just do all the green screening and finishing in Blender. I'm just not experienced with that. Should I use an iPad with a green picture or paper for brick films? I recommend the iPad if you have it. It just gives you a much sharper edge, because it's lit evenly and it's also projecting its own light. So you just get a cleaner key. And again, it's just a convenience factor, you don't need it, but that is what I'd recommend if you have it. How do you deal with green minifigs? You use a blue screen. So that's why you have two different options. If you have a character with green, use a blue screen. If you have a character with blue, use a green screen. It's very rare that you'd run into a case where a blue versus green screen wouldn't work, and if you do run into that problem, again, I'll show how to remedy that in the computer. And that'll do it for this week's Q&A. If your question wasn't answered in this video, I'll still be pulling from this post for next week's Q&A, so tune in for that. If you want to be a part of the next one, follow me on Instagram. And there you go. I hope this video was helpful for you and maybe taught you a thing or two about the world of chroma keying. I'll be back next week with part 2, jumping into the computer and camera side of chroma keying. So be sure to subscribe to be here for that. Until next time, on to the next one.